It was the morning of May 25th, 1979, in SoHo, Manhattan. The streets, still transitioning from their industrial past into the artsy neighborhood it would later become, were quieter than usual. In the Patz household, 6-year-old Etan Patz was brimming with excitement. For weeks, Etan had been asking his mother if he could walk alone to the school bus stop just 2 short blocks away. It was a tiny request, one that most parents of the 1970s were beginning to allow. New York City was busy, but neighborhoods were still considered watchful communities. Julie, his mother, finally agreed that morning. She packed his lunch, a sandwich, fruit, and a drink, and kissed him goodbye. She reminded him to be careful crossing the street. Etan put on his little cap, slung his book bag over his shoulder, and stepped out the front door. It was the last time anyone in his family saw him alive. When Etan didn't return home that afternoon, his mother's worry turned to panic. She called the school, only to learn something horrifying. Etan had never even made it onto the bus. By evening, the Patz family was frantically contacting police, neighbors, and friends. Officers arrived quickly, and what began as a missing child report turned into a massive search operation. The search was immediate and relentless. Police officers, volunteers, and neighbors scoured the streets, basements, abandoned buildings, and alleys. Bloodhounds were brought in, but their trail stopped abruptly just blocks away. It was as though the boy had disappeared into thin air. Within days, Etan's face was everywhere, on posters, flyers, and lampposts across Manhattan. The Patz family distributed thousands of them, working with community members to blanket the city with their son's photograph. The photo was striking: a small boy with bright blue eyes, sandy hair, and a shy smile. That picture would soon become one of the most recognized images of a missing child in America. The city, already struggling with crime and fear during the late 1970s, was shaken to its core. Parents who once allowed their children to walk to school or play outside unsupervised began clutching their hands tighter, no longer trusting the safety of daylight. Etan's case was different. It was one of the first times a missing child was treated not as a runaway or a domestic matter, but as a serious potential abduction. The investigation dragged on. Dozens of tips poured in daily, some credible, others hoaxes, and many dead ends. Psychics, opportunists, and false confessors added to the chaos. The Patz family endured years of torment. Every time a child's body was found in New York or nearby states, hope would rise only to collapse into grief. Stanley Patz, Etan's father, became relentless. He took on much of the investigative work himself, pursuing leads, talking to witnesses, and pushing the police to continue searching. He turned his grief into determination, ensuring the world would not forget his son. By the mid-1980s, the name Jose Antonio Ramos emerged as a chilling figure in the case. Ramos was a known pedophile with a disturbing record. He had a connection to Etan's babysitter and allegedly admitted to law enforcement that he had lured a boy resembling Etan into a drain pipe around the time of the disappearance. Police believed Ramos might be the one. He was even arrested and convicted on unrelated charges of child sexual abuse. In 2004, the Patz family filed a civil lawsuit against Ramos and won, with the court declaring him responsible for Etan's death. But here was the heartbreaking truth. There was no physical evidence, no body, no direct link tying Ramos to Etan. He served time for other crimes, but never faced murder charges in Etan's case. The Patz family still had no closure. Decades passed. Then, in 2012, the case exploded back into headlines. A man named Pedro Hernandez, who had once worked at a small bodega near the Patz family's home, suddenly confessed. Hernandez claimed that on that fateful morning in 1979, he saw Etan walking by, offered him a soda, and lured him into the basement of the store. There, Hernandez said, he strangled the boy and stuffed his body into a bag, leaving it out with the trash. The confession was haunting, but it raised questions. Hernandez had no prior record. He had serious mental health issues and a history of hallucinations. He had never been on the radar of investigators in 3 decades. Some wondered if he was fabricating the story for attention or because of psychological illness. Still, prosecutors felt there was enough to move forward. In 2015, the the trial of Pedro Hernandez began. For the Patz family, who had waited 36 years, this was both a moment of hope and dread. The trial was grueling. Hernandez's lawyers argued that his confession was unreliable, coerced from a mentally unstable man who imagined details after decades of news coverage. The defense claimed there was no physical evidence, no remains, no crime scene. The first jury couldn't reach a unanimous decision, leading to a mistrial. But in 2017, after a retrial, Hernandez was convicted of kidnapping and murder. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. For the Patz family, it was the closest thing to closure they would ever receive. Etan's disappearance reshaped America. His face became one of the first missing children to appear on milk cartons, sparking a national movement to spread awareness. His case directly influenced the creation of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It changed how police departments handle missing child cases, ensuring they were treated with urgency from the start. May 25th, the day of Etan's disappearance, is now recognized as National Missing Children's Day in the United States. Even though Etan never returned home, his short life left an impact that saved countless other children. Stanley and Julie Patz lived with the shadow of May 25th, 1979, for the rest of their lives. They kept Etan's room intact for years, and Stanley famously refused to move from their SoHo loft because he believed that one day, Etan might somehow come back and need to find his way home. The tragedy of Etan Patz was more than a family's heartbreak. It was a turning point for a nation, a chilling reminder of how one child's disappearance could forever alter the way society protects its most vulnerable. Etan's story remains one of the most haunting and unforgettable true crime cases in American history.